Shadow Slave. By Guiltythree. Chapter 1209 No Way Out. The Sin of Solace was a transcendent memory, and one that had an enchantment enhancing the material of the blade, at that. And yet, as soon as the creature grabbed the white jade, Sunny felt that it was moments away from breaking. He had been planning to deliver the follow-up strike while augmenting the cursed sword with all 5 of his shadows, but it felt like if he did, there would be no sword for him to augment. Cursing, Sunny hurriedly dismissed the jade blade and staggered back. At the same time, Master Su moved, and Saint was suddenly flying back. She hit the wall of the chamber with a deafening boom, shattering the black stones and creating a deep crater. White sand flowed from the cracks, falling on her broken armor. A split second later, Jet brought her glaive down on the harrowing creature. Its ghostly blade passed through the abomination's dead flesh unimpeded, cutting straight into its soul. Then, a net of black cracks spread through the enchanted steel, and it exploded into countless fragments. Startled, Soul Reaper lost her balance. Saishan's delicate hands were like demonic claws, easily slicing through the creature's neck. But the creature was still smiling. The wound on its chest that the Sin of Solace had left behind had already closed. The deep cut delivered by Saint's sword was gone, too. As Sunny, Jet, and Saishan watched in horror, the mangled neck of Master Su rippled and healed, with not a speck left on his skin. What? Saishan's voice suddenly sounded small. At the same time, she sent Sunny a tense mental message. Frowny face, what do we do? He was the one who had informed her about the nature of the newcomer, so Saishan must have hoped that Sunny knew something about how to deal with the creature. However, he did not. He only knew that fighting it was suicidal. Sunny did not hesitate at all. Dismissing Saint, he dashed back and shouted, "Run!" In the next moment, the whirlwind of sparks filling the chamber finally coalesced into a lumbering, monstrous figure. A bestial hand exploded forward, swatting Master Su aside and slamming him against the wall. No matter how strong the creature was, its mass remained the same as that of the possessed corpse. So, even if its power was great and terrible, it was not impossible to overcome. At least for a few moments. And that was exactly what the echo of Saint Direfong Sunny had summoned was supposed to buy them. The body of the towering beast occupied almost half of the underground chamber, scraping the ceiling with its head. One arm was extended forward, pushing the abomination into the cracked stones, while the other was already flying to deliver a devastating strike. Sunny doubted that the echo would be able to accomplish much, though. What the hell? I actually managed to receive the echo of a mighty saint. A saint, damn it. But it's barely enough to slow the enemy down for a moment. The nightmare desert was veiled in darkness, and darkness meant death. However, being trapped in the small underground chamber with the harrowing creature also meant death. They could either remain and try to fight, or escape and try to survive the ancient battlefield. Both choices were equally fatal, but at least the latter would kill them a few seconds, or maybe even minutes, later. Hurry! Jet was the first one to jump up, grab the edges of the narrow fissure, and climb into the narrow crawlway. Her figure disappeared from sight, and Saishan instantly followed. Without wasting any time, Sunny stepped through the shadows and appeared above ground, just in time to grab Jet's hand and help her climb out of the fissure. The roar of the eternal battle, which had been muted by the breath of stone, assaulted them like a storm. Looking out of the ruin, Sunny paled. Under the ghostly starlight, legions of the ancient dead were fighting each other. There was no skin or flesh left on their perfectly black bones. Some of the dead resembled humans, some were like giants, and some were too monstrous and alien to describe with words. However, all of them were terrifyingly powerful. It was strange to see that the world had not been destroyed by the dreadful fury of their battle. How was a fragile human supposed to survive that cataclysmic clash? We are supposed to go through that. Saishan had just climbed out of the fissure and stopped, staring at the scene of the harrowing battle. Her silken gray skin suddenly seemed darker. Jet looked at the desert beyond the ruin, then at the hole they had just climbed out of. Just at that moment, the whole structure shuddered, as if something was pushing against the black stones from below. And a second later, the spell whispered into Sunny's ears, "Your echo has been destroyed." He staggered and gritted his teeth. Just like that. Sunny knew that the echo of Direfong would not be able to defeat the harrowing creature, but still. He had not expected it to be destroyed in mere seconds. He had just gotten that echo. And now, it was gone. Just what kind of horror was wearing the body of Master Su? No matter what it was, the three of them were not capable of fighting it. Even if Dire Fong himself had been here, or all the other saints of the great clans, Sunny was not sure that the abomination could have been stopped. Summoning Nightmare, he shouted to Jet and Seishin, "Get on." Soul Reaper stared at him for a split second. But I still don't know how to ride a horse. Sunny was already running away. Figure it out, if you want to live. A moment later, both Jet and Seishin climbed onto Nightmare. The black steed instantly rushed away from the narrow fissure in the stone floor. Sunny was just a step or two ahead, turning into a swift shadow. Together, the four of them flew out of the ruin and plunged into the dreadful havoc of the eternal battle. Chapter 12 10 Dead Soldiers. Nightmare flew through the battlefield where the servants of dead deities fought against each other, unable to resolve their ancient grudge even after thousands of years had passed. All around the galloping steed, giants made of black bones clashed with murderous fury. Each strike of a rusted blade, each blow of a vicious claw, each snap of crushing jaws produced powerful shock waves that stirred the white sand and made it seem as if the world was on the verge of collapsing. Angry sparks flew into the air, and a cacophonous clangor filled the dark sky. Crazy, crazy. This is crazy. Sunny was in the form of a shadow, gliding across the sand in front of Nightmare. He was serving as a guide, and the black stallion followed, carrying Jet and Seishin. Sunny's mind was in overdrive, absorbing every minute detail of what was happening around them. He had to find a way to avoid the ancient wraiths and slip between them, somehow, while not being destroyed by their destructive wrath. It was not easy. No, it was almost impossible. His only saving grace was that the dead did not seem to pay them any attention. Still, just the aftershocks of their dreadful attacks were enough to obliterate a puny ascended like Sunny. Damn it all. As they moved away from the ruin, Sunny saw a black skeleton easily parting the night sky with its obsidian sword. The abominable bone behemoth that had been attacking the dead swordsman shuddered and collapsed, making the whole desert shake. Its mountain-like skeleton, almost a kilometer long, was cleanly cut in half along the spine. A phalanx of ancient warriors marching forward to meet the charge of monstrous skeletal cavalry. The moment the two tides of black bones met, millions of stars were suddenly extinguished in the sky. Two giants colliding above the dunes. One wielded a sword, while the other had iron shackles fastened around its wrists and ankles. The heavy chains rang as a gargantuan shackled hand shot forward, grabbing the colossal sword and flinging it away. Right in the direction of Sunny. Curse. The giant sword fell down just a few meters ahead of Sunny. However, it did not hit the sand. Instead, the ancient weapon plunged into the shadows, disappearing into their bottomless embrace. The steel blade flashed past his intangible form like a wall of steel, barely missing Sunny himself. We won't survive here for long. No one really knew what the Nightmare Desert had been before, but it was known that one of the last, or at least one of the fiercest, battles in the war between the demons and the gods had taken place here. Maybe the desert had already existed back then, or maybe this land had been turned into a desert by the battle. No one knew why the fallen soldiers rose from the dead every night to continue the ferocious clash, either. Why did they continue to fight? What power had been unleashed here? Who was the architect of this nightmare? All Sunny knew was that this was no place for the living. It was barely a place suited for the dead, even. The weakest of the black skeletons were equal to powerful corrupted creatures. The strongest. He did not even want to know. From what Nephi's had said, the true horror was hidden in the heart of the desert, where the champions of the two armies had fought and died. Sunny struggled to imagine what could be more horrific than the catastrophic clash happening around them, but he understood very well that they were not going to survive in the open. They were like ants here. No one had stepped on them yet, but with how intense and harrowing the fighting between the dead was, it was only a matter of time, minutes, or maybe even seconds, before someone or something erased them from existence. Just an echo of a distant strike was enough to annihilate them. He had been planning to reach some other ruin. The location of the nearest structures was burned into his memory, but once they entered the battlefield, Sunny realized that it was of no use. The white dunes had shifted, and he had no marks to orient himself in the desert. From the moment the three of them escaped the ruin, they were utterly lost. The ground shook and split as a skeleton in rusted armor slammed its war hammer into the shield of a six-armed demon, and Nightmare almost stumbled. Bearing its fangs, the black steed soared into a high jump, landed on the spine of a lumbering monster, galloped across it and landed on the other side, faster than wind. Jet and Seishin held on for dear life. Sunny was thrown out of the shadows and rolled on the sand, then jumped to the side, barely avoiding a titanic foot that descended from somewhere above like a black cliff. The shockwave of its landing sent him stumbling back, and he tasted blood. Dazed, he dove back into the shadows and flew toward Nightmare. We need to hide. We need to hide. Suddenly, Sunny saw a flash of light somewhere far away. He couldn't really perceive colors while in the form of a shadow, but from the purity of the light, he knew that it had to be white. Some distance away, obscured by countless fighting skeletons, a white halo was rising above the desert. There. Without spending too much time doubting himself, Sunny pivoted and flew toward the distant light. Nightmare followed, foam falling from his mouth. All around them, the armies of the dead continued to annihilate each other, their battle slowly turning into a frenzied, apocalyptic scene of the end of the world. Sunny knew that he was going to die. He was supposed to be dead already, even the power of the clashing creatures was too great for mere mortals to survive. And yet, it seemed that luck was on his side today. Somehow, they were continuing to cling to their lives. Eventually, they reached the source of the white light. Hidden behind rolling white dunes, a stone edifice protruded from the sand. It was surrounded by a ring of white flame, and, strangely enough, none of the black skeletons dared to cross it. Sunny did not risk plunging into the fire, either. Instead, he stepped through the shadows and appeared within the ring of flames. Nightmare simply jumped over them, landing nearby. The ruin was in front of them, seemingly empty. There was no movement inside. Feeling his heart start to beat faster, Sunny glanced at the white flame, and then at the broken black stones. His breath grew heavy. Neph.